As an economy sinks, governments look to find the most political option for an attempt at reviving it. On today's episode, we'll discuss the following: Britain introducing a mortgage less than 1%, real estate prices falling recently, and the madness of a decaying global economy. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's look at obviously the situation going on in Britain with the whole Brexit. This is very relevant. We'll begin by looking at real estate prices. The market was hit hardest in the southwest England, where values tumbled by 2.8% month on month. That's according to this data here. Wales had a drop of 1.9% and so on. London values increased by just 0.6%. A far cry from the huge increases that we're seeing in the years. So there are different regions. This applies to any city around the world, any nation, where you have different geographical sectors. Think about the major cities around the US, for example, where you have somewhere like even Manhattan, where typically a lot of wealth is concentrated. And then you have a city, Detroit being another example, where you have essentially no more middle class, and there is this big divide in between the two, and you can see that drastically with the housing prices, where prices may continue to go up in London, or at least do much better than the surrounding areas, whereas you will see the wealth disparity obviously being very apparent in that as well. Let's move on to the next article. HSBC's lowest ever 0.99% mortgage. What's the catch? They say there's a few catches, but essentially you get a less than 1% mortgage. They're practically giving them away for free. And hold on to that thought for just a moment. HSBC has launched Britain's first fixed rate mortgage with an interest rate below 1% as competition among lenders hots up and the cost of borrowing for banks and building societies falls to new lows. So when you're looking at the Bank of England giving these banks essentially free money, even in the UK, even in areas like Australia, even in others, the interest rates are still very low. It may not be 0%, but it's still quite low. The banks can borrow at very cheap prices, which means they have an incentive to lend it out to people, try to make a few bucks off of that. The bank is offering customers the chance to lock in for 2 years at an interest rate of 0.99%. They need to put a deposit down and so on. And they're saying here, quoting here, absolutely ridiculously low, sets a new benchmark for the 2-year fixed rates. Now, why are they doing this? Why would they want to exacerbate a bubble? Well, obviously the economy's in trouble. They're worried about it. And so you have to throw everything you have at it. The Bank of England will print money. The Bank of England will push interest rates down. They'll do whatever it takes to get it going again. Of course, these are all failed attempts, but that's what they're going to do. That's what they are in the process of doing right now. Look at this here. And when I talk about free money, when I talk about practically giving these homes away, the mortgage rates at practically 0%. Well, in fact, for the first time, a Danish mortgage bank had a mortgage with a negative interest rate. A negative interest rate. And if you look down here, there are a few who have had a negative rate. It's a quite unusual situation. It's hard to calculate here, but essentially they're saying that some people have actually had a negative interest rate as a result of this bank's activities. This means that this bank have had to pay interest back instead of charging them to a handful of customers. Wow, I mean, I covered this before, but even just reading it every time, it just surprises me to see that, to think about that. All right, now I just have a whole bunch of articles here that I just want to cover very briefly. It's very important information, and I'm trying to stick them all together here. Goodbye password. Banks opt to scan fingers and faces instead. All I want to say is that this could be more secure. Sure, your eye is a better signature than with your hand, with your fingertips. It's going to be better. However, it's the concerns of privacy. Your data is being stored somewhere. Maybe it's secure. Maybe it's encrypted. But what if it's stolen by a hacker? What if it is abused by those who control, just like they abuse the whole money system itself? It's the same people. So that's the double-edged sword. This right here is a crackdown on free speech. Police have locked down a village in southern China to ward off fresh anti-corruption protests. So essentially this town here was protesting against the Communist Party. They had a democratically elected leader. He planned the protests and then locked down the city. Very frightening. New York hedge fund executive in apparent suicide after insider trading charges. How many people in this industry are dying? It's a huge number. It's strange how many of them are either murdered or committing suicide. It's something that I'm continuing to follow. And right here, Tesla buying SolarCity Corp. Even though the stocks catered on Wednesday, lopping more than $2.8 billion of value of the proposed deal. Essentially, those shareholders were not too happy about it, but I think that this could be beneficial. Obviously, if you own the whole market, then you have sort of a monopoly here, so I'm not really sure what's going on. But essentially, the reason I'm mentioning this is because, number one, mergers and acquisitions are taking place all the time, particularly in times when the economies are weak. That's what I find to be something of a trend. And then you have this here where it is a company like Tesla who is just continuing to expand. They're purchasing more and more corporations, and they are basically getting into all different types of businesses. They're expanding into the space programs and everything else. So good to see technological advancements, but of course there's a double-edged sword yet again. And this really leads me into Mark Zuckerberg covers his laptop camera. You should consider it too. Actually, it's funny because the image that they show here is basically he has a piece of tape over the camera, a piece of tape over the microphone, because of course he could be hacked and they could be listening to what he says or seeing him on the camera, releasing photos, privacy and all this. But what it goes to show you is that your camera, your microphone isn't safe either. Just something to note. And this here covering the robots and automation. Europe's growing army of robot workers could be classed as electronic persons and their owners liable to paying social security for them. And the European Union adopts a draft plan to address the realities of a new industrial revolution. So now what if your robot decided to go off and kill somebody? Are you responsible for that? I mean, this is ridiculous. The way that they're allowing this to expand the technology is expanding before the law is expanding regarding it, before even the artificial intelligence could be controlled. It's actually going ahead of it, and that is, in fact, the danger. And then this stupidity here, Rolling Stone, why it's time to repeal the Second Amendment. I'm not an American, I'm a Canadian myself, but I do believe that the Second Amendment is something positive. If you don't like it, if you're in the States and you don't like it, move to an area like Chicago. They have a full gun ban, nothing to worry about. Of course, there is more gun violence there than, as far as I'm aware, anywhere else in the US. So, just go there. You want to have guns repealed? Just go. Go to Chicago. Go to these places. Areas in California where there's so much gun violence, yet there is no guns allowed. That's just the way it works. The areas where you have more guns is the areas where you have less carjackings and home invasions and things like this, because people know the guy on the inside probably has a weapon. But I guess nobody wants to hear the truth. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found it informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. Head over to Amazon, where they have a look inside feature, which will allow you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.